Hello, welcome to the Peoria Art Guild. I'm Ann Coulter, and this is our Artist of the Month, John Heintzman, and I'm here to talk to John about his beautiful exhibition that is hanging on the walls of the Art Guild.
Thank you, Ann.
Yes, John. Hats have changed here. John is usually the one that curates the work. But this time I got to help him choose the work and select these beautiful pieces. And John, this time, finally gets to be the artist on the walls. So we have the privilege to talk to him about all of this fantastic work.
And this is my torn paper series. So it all started with tearing paper and putting it back together and using torn lines to create lines instead of printing, drawing, scratching, whatever. So it's all about physical lines where I take paper and I'm ripping them and then I put it back together, collage it.
So have you done this kind of work before this
No,
show?
this started pre-pandemic only because I had suffered an unknown disease that left me in the hospital for a few weeks, and then I had to recoup at home for another 5 months, and so I didn't have access to much. And then during COVID, we also didn't have access to other places to get materials and things like that. But I did have access to plenty of bond paper and a copy machine. And so at school, I would just do, actually it's creating a print from nothing. I would open the copy machine and I would expose the paper. So instead of it being white, it's printing actually black. And so that is the matrix that I was working with the whole time. And it is black and white, as you can see.
So the black paper we're seeing here is just photocopy paper.
Photostatic.
Photostatic, that's the technical term, photostatic paper.
So it's working with a toner. And the thing is, when you rip that, and I tried using other works like Arches, and it's got too much cotton to it, it's got too much resistant, and you can't just really pull and tear and make it kind of almost sensual, the line. And so I was using this, and again, it's sort of like, I come from a printmaking background. At the University of Iowa, we made our own ink, and believe it or not, it was black ink. And so most of my ideas are expressed in black and white because I was a drawing major and a printmaker. And so black and white is just natural to me. And when Jeff and you decided you're going to curate the show, I do have some colored
Yes, you do.
works that are here, but we thought that this is probably the best situation is to show what I did initially with black and white. And just to say it, it's very graphic, and I appreciate that. What I also appreciate is that these aren't precious anymore. They're made with bond paper, so I'm not worried about having spent $5 on a piece of paper that I'm just going to rip apart or whatever. But the material is almost genius because it takes, you can reuse this, you can bind it and rebind it, we can fold it, we can manipulate it, and it has its own characteristics and its own expression. And that's what I think these have to be. They're all about expressions. And these 6 pieces here, well, actually 7 pieces that we started with, Ann and Jeff saw these and they thought that these are what is going to set the tone for and the rhythm of the exhibition. These are monotypes. So these pieces were made from a different collage that I collaged then together and actually bound 2 images together. You can see in this case, and I don't have this actual plate with me, but this is repeated back and forth. So it's a mirrored image. It's mirrored here. Here I've done it and I've offset it just a little bit. Here I tease because Jeff and I do get to live with a lot of art in our house, from our Ann Coulter to our prints that we have by Sean Scully. And what I think, when I look at this one, it's sort of a homage to Sean Scully subconsciously, because there's lots of lines, there's lots of stripes, and there's things like that. And each time I start a piece, I actually have taken a page out of your working technique, and I make a rip. And I know you put a line down or someplace on the canvas and you work out from that. That's what I do too. I make this rip, I get this piece of this line, this physical line that I can then manipulate. I started, and we'll see the first pieces that I did in the other room. They're very minimal. And I think a lot of art starts with minimalism, where you're just taking a simple idea, you've restricted yourself to the medium and to the surface that you're going to work with. But I wanted to work smaller than the 7 or 8 by 8s that I did. So I started to make these 12 by 12s. And this is a series that I just started ripping up paper. The thing was, being without the ability to get large pieces of paper, I had to do what most artists do, is I had to construct the paper myself. So each of these first are black paper that I put back together so that it would be 12 by 12.
So you're starting with the same basic material to begin with, the photostatic paper, but then you're building.
Yes, I construct the paper,
and
then I start to rip. Some of these have the actual rip right into the paper, but then as I went from the very, very minimal, I started to get a little more complicated and complex. And so I started, what would happen if I got the curve in the line? And so I'd get a curve in the line. How am I going to use that? And so I would be working on these, and I'll be the first one to be honest. I would be working on this in a particular way, and all of a sudden, by the time I finish it, I turn it upside down, and it looks better. It just is how my thinking is, I want to put this down on paper as quickly as I can, express myself, but then I have to make balance out of it. I have to make sense of it. So I start to rotate them, and that's how they happen to do this.
There's a lot of contemporary artists who work that way, the minimalist artists and abstract artists of all different media do that all the time to see what they're dealing with, turn the work upside down.
And Baselitz, of course, is the most famous. He's a German artist who had all these paintings, and he noticed at one point in time that people were running through the gallery in like 20 minutes, and it was really kind of perturbing him. So he decided to make them stop and look. He would literally turn his paintings upside down. But then he began painting upside down too, so that it does give you a different perspective and a different way of making marks. And I think that's what really is so important to me as a printmaker and a drawing person, is that it's about mark making, and that we need to make marks every day. We have a wonderful program here, the MAP, the Men Are Arts program here. The MAP is for junior and senior high school students. And one of the things that I really want them to understand is that you need to make a mark every day. And it can be a word, or it can just be a random whatever. But you need to express yourself in that way, and you build a vocabulary. And that's what I hope that people understand. The space between us is the space between understanding the vocabulary that I've started to employ here, which is very abstract. It's not meant to be representational. If anyone knows Anne's work, they're incredible landscapes, and they are beautiful, and they are places that you want to go into.
John,
Mine, on the other hand, are all about abstract language. And so it's about each line being a different emotional experience, shall we say, and that I'm going to put them back together and create something. Some of them are very, very geometric, such as this one, which is a lot like Sol LeWitt or somebody like that. And then I got into, sometimes we're going to make curves, and we're going to do that. I worked quite a bit with the negative positive. You can literally see here, Anne, how I constructed these paintings. This went from going from 12 by 12, and I thought, I really do want to make a little larger. So I just started constructing these that are about approximately 31 by 31. So they're square images. And you can see here, I collage back on, I rip the paper and I collage back on. I rip these, I collage back on. But I love the play with negative and positive.
It seems like the scale really allowed you to make that happen, where it would be hard to make that happen on a smaller scale.
It does. And it also gives you a little bit more time to appreciate each line, where they're compressed in the 12 by 12 series. But here, you can really see, and the thing is, it doesn't need to be a perfectly straight line. It doesn't need to be, like I had total control of my brush, and I put that stroke down there. Instead, I'm pulling it, and the paper changes, and I'm making the same tear from both of my hands as I did
Right.
before, but it
Paper
doesn't.
has a life
it
of its own,
It's
doesn't
the
it?
same. You can see this one's
Yep.
much straighter, this one, but I didn't, believe me, I didn't sneeze or anything. I just was making the same marks and the same marks.
Well, I think that there's a real beauty to the torn line against some of the hard-edged lines. To me, that's one of the most powerful parts of these pieces.
Yes,
Is
and
those two things
they
working
really
together.
don't reference anything, but we do have to tell you that about this piece here. This is a piece that I did, about a year ago, I think it was. Anyhow, Jeff and I have a friend who gave us a rain shower head for our birthday, which was just a few months ago. And she is convinced that this is our appreciation for the rain shower head because it comes down. And I
Sure.
thought, you know what, that's perfectly fine. If you need to reference this as a shower head, then do so. It really was just actually pieces that I had left over from when I made this piece over here, which is called Overheard. And Overheard is an installation. And these are the pieces that I did first. I did a lot of just tearing paper and then putting it back together. In this case, I loved just the linear aspect of it where it's just going across. It's meant to be above. Again, I've taken a page out of a few of my friends' books. Richard Tuttle and John Fraser have hung things high, hung things low, and I thought, well, this will be really good. And I think those are the only two that I've got two pieces in here that have a title to them. And this is one of them. And most of the work, it's untitled because I want you to experience it and you to establish what kind of title you would give it. I don't want to say this is happy, or I don't want to say this is sad or morose or something like that. That would be your interpretation of whatever it is that you're seeing and how you understand how the piece talks to you and works with you.
I love this triangular installation, and to me it works so well where you have it located in the show, because you come through these four pieces where there's a lot of focus about the negative positive space. So I'm looking for this negative positive space, and I get over here, and the first thing that happens is that I see that, the negative positive, where that black triangular form drops back and the white wall becomes positive, which is such a fun surprise. It's so simple and elegant. And
minimalist.
I don't think it would happen. Maybe it wouldn't happen for me anyway if I didn't walk through this first exercise
I agree,
first.
and I think that's one of the things when we curate shows, and you know it as well as anybody because we've had two of your exhibitions here, and it's amazing with the space, the art gallery, that the Art Guild has for its galleries is just very unique. It's simple, but yet we can get a lot of rhythm going. We can have a punch, so to
Right.
speak, and it stops you in your tracks and you go on to the next thing. And I think the way Jeff and you curated it, that it really shows that installation is just as important as the work itself, that we can actually educate people on how to appreciate art and then how to hang art in their own homes, just to give you that same kind of intimate experience that you'd have in a large group. These are all monotypes that I did. We put the four of these together, actually because this is the actual collage that I did, was one of these. And then I replicated it. And then I start to take it apart and I start putting it back together and joining it and letting one half talk to the other half, so to speak, or see how they engage with each other. And again, I just keep collaging and collaging, sometimes joining them, whatever. And each one becomes unique, but yet when it's easily recognizable that it's the same language, so to speak, the same tearing, the same imagery.
But you get the viewer so engaged in these pieces because we start looking for how this is working and how these repeated forms and what is happening here. And so you let us play along, and it becomes very playful, visually
it is.
playful.
I don't
so
think of it
we can
as
feel your experience as you're doing it. I feel that when I look at these because I start doing it too. Oh, that's this one. Oh, look, that's upside down, and so on and so forth. So I'm sort of puzzling through it along with you.
And that puzzling through is perfect.
Great fun.
Perfect. One of the other things that I did have in at our condo in one of our rooms became my studio during COVID in particular,
I love
are these wood constructions. We had a friend that has since passed away, but she was a art teacher at Richwoods and was adding on a studio actually at her home. And she would come to give me boxes of discarded things that she couldn't throw out, that she knew that there was another life to them. And so, don't I want them? And of course I said yes. So I had all these simple blocks of wood that had been cut off of whatever when they were building it. And so I simply nailed them together, and then I had white artist tape. And so all of the white is just a piece of tape that I've, again, torn off. And sometimes I've torn it, and sometimes I haven't. And then I painted into these. These are the only ones that actually have paint to them. And again, I think the most important part of them was the negative positive. And are they windows? Are they, what are they actually? And then Jeff actually had decided that at first we thought we would put them in a very simple straight line, and then we realized, like you said, the playful idea is that we need to kind of mix it up a little bit.
Oh, there's such a nice rhythm
and give it
here.
a little bit of poetic
Yep.
interpretation, I guess.
Well, and it reflects the whole body of work in the rhythm. You're not only creating rhythm in each piece, but the whole room builds a rhythm. And so I think this wall really accentuates that.
Yeah.
You've got this wonderful bounce going through it that just gets viewers interested in the physical experience of the rhythm of this work.
Thank you.
Plus, each one of them is just
well,
so
each
tender.
is what they are.
So beautiful.
But yet they're not really precious. They're raw wood. Was a movement back in the early 70s, art povera, which was actually in Italian is poor man's art. And the idea was that you just used simple materials, raw materials, and that's what these are made out of. And also, so are the others. They're a simple bond paper. They're not an expensive thing. They're something that people discard with ease because it's cheap and but yet
there's a power in that.
Yeah, and the material is what's so
power.
much fun to work with. And as a painter, you know that there's oil paint that some is good, some is better than others, let's say. And that when you're painting with that, when you're applying it, it just feels good. And that's the same with paper. And I will be the first to admit I learned to love that paper because of drawing and printmaking at Iowa.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
This is a set of diptychs that I did, it is meant to be together. I don't know why, but when I started doing this, to be honest, I was making, and I was actually almost like marking time. Each thing was, each tear was another moment and another moment. I then reattached them, glued them all back together, and then again, just with orientation, I thought I want it to be a vertical instead of a horizontal. And so these, I thought they were great. And you can see that you master, when you start doing anything repetitively, that you master some amount of control, but then there's some things that don't. So you can see some of these will match up perfectly well. And they're it looks like it's the same line. But then you get one that I don't know, what happened, but it just changes. You can also see, and I think this is a good example of where some are a little bit wider, the mark is wider, some is not. I don't know if that creates more tension or not, but it's a lot of fun. Also, I decided not to put this under glass. It was not going to glaze this because I want people to see the physical aspects of it, and that I don't care if you look around and you see that it's lifting here.
It's a great idea, especially given that so much of the rest of the work is under glass. In this instance, we get to really get our face up there and understand what photostatic paper looks like. And what we're looking at. And the three-dimensional nature of this piece is just beautiful and kind of a ode to the pandemic, isn't it?
Yes,
just
repetitive. The marking of time.
Yes.
Marking of time. We're going to go into the project space, which is a wonderful gallery that we have here, which is much smaller, a little more intimate, but it's also, the idea is that this can be an area where we have artists who are working on things that are in progress that are not normally finalized. It's not necessarily. We have some of my work that is in color that surprises a few people. And I know you enjoyed these.
So did you do these alongside the black and white, or did you do a bunch of black and white and then you said, oh my gosh, I have to look at some color?
No, I started those and I did mostly a lot of the black and whites. But I also had this colored paper, and so I thought, and actually I'll be honest, it started in the summer, in June. And so maybe it was because it's brighter out or lighter out or whatever. And I just thought, I wonder what I could do tearing color and melding the two pieces back together and seeing what kind of tension I could get. It was not necessarily a study in color theory as opposed to contrasting colors or complementary colors or anything like that. It was just taking what I had and just doing something. And some of the shapes, especially the jagged kind, were very reminiscent of an artist that Anne, I know you know, and Jeff knows, but a gentleman whose artwork was very much like this. It was Clifford Still, and he has a wonderful museum in Denver where our sister is, and she's been to that. And so I just started playing with that idea and using color, the tear. Sometimes I let the tear really be present, and sometimes, and I'll give you a clue. It depends on whether you're tearing towards you or back. Whether you get this,
whether you get the white or
the
not.
white or not get the white. So it became just a kind of a fun game to play. I hate to say that. It was playing the whole
negative.
time.
I think thinking about making art as a game is really a freeing concept, and sort of demystifies how you do it and what you're doing, and you can see the playfulness in these pieces. But other things carry through too, the rhythms and the positive negative spaces. There's so much exploration of that in these that I love. The translation into the color.
And some of them are more minimal, such as this one, which is literally just a torn piece. I won't tell you whether it was the orange I tore out or the black I tore, but and that's part of it. I want people to be kind of curious and kind of look and see if they can figure out which is the dominant piece and which is the piece that was collaged in or joined back into and everything. Again, some of these started one way. This is a particular one. It was the other way, and I thought, no, I want this tension so that it's coming down rather than going up. And so I just changed it when I framed it.
It makes you realize that even with the simplicity of what you're doing, how complex the decision making is. It's very complicated, and that's sort of the beauty of it.
It is.
To be able to end up with these very minimal images, but it's through a very complex decision-making process that you arrive at that. That's what's fun for us as artists.
And it's fun and very satisfying for me. I mean, it's kind of amazing because I'm just as satisfied with these. I'm not making more of these necessarily, but I think when you and Jeff were thinking about the show and everything, I think it was the best decision was that these are in the project space, that these are removed just a little bit from the other part so that we set a tone for that and then we set a tone for here. And it's all about taking risks. The project space maybe some things will work, won't work. And I say that because this is an installation that I did with 96 of the monotypes. And we didn't know how this was going to work or not work. I think it works pretty well. It was a matter of randomness, though. I did not start with number 1 and just put up 1, 2, 3, 4. I just took a whole stack. I've made, to be honest, over 350 of these.
Wow.
I did lose some of them in we had a pipe burst, and so we lost a little bit of artwork. And so we just started to put these in. We got a very good friend of ours who's a little OCD, willing to put these all up together. And she was just picked one up and started putting them together. The other thing that really is so satisfying is that it's actually become an installation as a piece of art. Okay? And that Jeff and I are also working with, we had a wonderful wonderful artist from Marisa Bernardi from Uruguay. And we're hoping to do an exchange with Uruguay. And one of the things was we don't know how we would get the artwork there. Well, I've solved that problem because I can send 100 pieces of these, 100 of the monotypes, and they can install it any way they want. And it will work. I think one of the things that you had suggested when we were doing this is that I should not and do not tack down all 4 of the corners, that let them lay and let them, and it does give it I hate to say it, but a little bit of more three-dimensional. It doesn't look like wallpaper. There's just a little bit, and it's not covered in glass, so you can see where I've collaged some of the mistakes, or so to speak, that just, they're there, and that's what it's all about. These were just sketches that I did from using the 12 by 12s and making duplications and starting to match some together and some that were obviously not made at the same time. And I think it works really well. We did it from the ceiling almost to the floor. And this is one of my greatest surprises, that it really worked as well as it did. And that's what we want artists to do. If anyone is applying for a show that's for this gallery, that we want something that maybe is in progress, or something that you don't want to know, or you want to take that risk and exhibit it. And that's what I did.
It's perfect on this wall. It's so much fun to walk in and be father. It's really
and some of them
so much fun.
Some just magically, like this one right here, the triangle just naturally went together. There's others that just the slightest little thing where they continue through each of them, and then some of them are this one and this one relate, but they have nothing to do with the other one. And so it just is, it's like reading a book or reading something where you don't have to necessarily think that everything has to complement something else. Instead, it can challenge us. And next time they're put up, they would not necessarily be in this order. And that I think it gives it new character each and every time
absolutely. It will be
installed.
Fresh every time it's installed. But somebody really needs to buy this whole body of work. And
we would like that.
Hang it on
Shannon
the wall.
would love that.
Because wouldn't it be fun to live with this every day, like
yes,
on a dining room wall, for example?
And I will, and again, we've talked about this. I know
enjoyable.
When we curated your show, that there were paintings that you had done for almost 2 years about the woods, and that they'd never been exhibited together. And it is sometimes so satisfying to an artist to see something that works when you put it up, and you can get away from it and not just be in your studio space,
it makes
and
all
give
the
it reference to being an installation. These 2 pieces here are an untitled piece. They actually are referenced to a foster child that we had, and this is the height he was at 13 years of age. Again, these were one of the first things that I did, and it was a matter of almost therapeutically ripping these pieces and then putting them back together and then joining them like this to make it 5'9". No,
That's
not really,
sweet.
but it's this particular time. Again, I think, though, I start and I'm thinking a lot about it horizontally, but then I want to change the dynamics by simply making it vertical. And all those lines are the same lines, but they're just, our orientation makes a lot.
It creates this wonderful tension, these 2 pieces together. They don't fight each other. There's just this really nice power between them as we go from one to the other and understand what's happening. They're so dynamic, and which is fascinating to me because they're so simple.
Yeah, they're very simple. Again,
so
minimal,
dynamic.
Starting with a very minimalist idea
simplest,
and approach.
black and white and torn paper, and it's fascinating how powerful you've managed to make all of this work with just the simplest of means.
Yes. And that's, I think, what most artists have to do sometimes. Sometimes
we have to remember that a lot of why this works is because you've been making art consistently for your whole life. 40, 50, however many years.
It is.
And that helps you to arrive at a place where you have the privilege of letting all of that history serve you in a certain way. And I think that's how this work how all your artwork works so well is because it's just sort of coming out of you, all the stuff that you know, you've learned,
well, I think our
lived.
experiences play, and when we say experiences, it's like making that mark every day. That it can change, but yet you've got something hidden in the back of you that's always going to be able to pull that to the forefront.
It's always been on your mind. You're always making art, even when you're not. You're making it in your head, and that's the power of this work, really.
This last series is actually, these are the first of the torn paper drawings that I did. And they're just small little 7.5 or 8 by 8s. And again, I just started, and this is one piece of paper that's just put back together. So there's not much collaging. I mean, there's the joining back together, but it's not direct collaging or anything. And I will say, a lot of it is from things that I've appreciated. This line here, most of you who are familiar with Georgia O'Keeffe, she has a wonderful large painting, and it's called Canyon Road or something like that. And it's just this road, and it's one singular line that goes from top to bottom. And it says so much. And you know, she said a lot in all of her paintings, but this was her most minimal work. And so I just started playing with that, and I started seeing the positive and negative can also be by just simply making this line. And do you see this side first, or do you see that side? Which one is dominant? Which one is speaking to you first? So that is. This piece and this piece, actually, most people are very familiar with Robert Motherwell, and there's an open series, his open series. Well, part of it came from in 1974, I believe it was. He was at Iowa. He premiered a portfolio called La Pintura, which was the open series. And it was a whole portfolio, and we had them at the museum, and we walked there every day, and we saw them every day.
You.
And
wow. While you were a student there, that work was there.
And that's part of what has helped us not only appreciate art, but to how we interpret art. And that there's references to other artists, there's references to other experiences that we've all had. And I think it really does come across in an abstract way, but through the language that I hope that I built over the years. You
did build a language, and I think that's such a great point that you make, that your work is not coming from nothing. This is not arbitrary. It's learned, it's known, it's your own history coming through the lines, the marks, the curves, the squares, the negative, positive, all those things that you've studied and used as your vocabulary over the years. They're all coming through here. So it's easy for somebody to look at this and say, oh, I could do that. What?
And they can.
And they can.
I welcome them to try. Please do, because it is.
But I guess my point is that everything you've done has meaning to you.
Yeah, it does.
You're not just making stuff to make stuff. It's every single thing you've done here in this wonderful, beautiful exhibition. It comes from meaning, it comes from reason, it comes from knowledge, it comes from love, it comes from all of those things. And so even though the work is so abstract, I can feel that
and
so
I just hope
much
that people really understand that the space between us is just trying to understand what is on this image and what is in your heart, and how does it connect with you, or not disconnect with you. You know, I hope that we can bring that together, and that people can understand that art itself is, whether it's referential and realistic or whether it's abstract, that it's all about expressing yourself.
Well, bravo, John.
Thank you so much.
It's just a beautiful accomplishment, and
Thank you.
We're privileged to have it here. Everybody needs to come down and see this exhibition.
Yep, and the show will be up until the end of the month.
Yep.
So visit us anytime.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you,
John.
John.
Thank you
You're the best.
so much.
Thanks, Anne.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye.